everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. A bitch is back talking about books. And today what we're going to be talking about is Where the Crawdads Sing. If you watch my channel a lot, you probably know what my favorite genres are, or actually what I like to do reviews on. I very much like to do reviews on romance novels because I think that is one of my more favorite genres, and it's very easy for me, because I've read so many of them, to criticize or nitpick, I guess, at the things that I liked and disliked about them and my pros and cons list. It's easy to do that in my head. Today, it might be shocking, I am going to be talking about something that is not romance. It is a contemporary fiction novel, and you've probably heard of it. It is an insanely popular book. I think by the time that this video gets uploaded, it will probably be in theaters as a movie already. But today, we're talking about Where the Crawdads Sing. Let me tell you something right off the bat. When I first started this book, I was kind of dreading it. I was dreading it because I've heard mixed things. Obviously, most of this book has very positive reviews. I think on Goodreads, it's almost at like a 4.5 stars, which is insanely good on Goodreads. It has over 1 million ratings, and it's kind of like a phenomenon of a book. Sometimes when it comes to quality books, the writing feels boring. And I'll give an example. Like, I read the book Little Fires Everywhere, and let me tell you right off the bat, I really loved that book. But the thing is that it felt so hard to read at moments, and I'm really hoping it's not because I'm a stupid ass bitch. I'm really hoping that it was just because I think I'm not as used to the type of narration that they're using. Sometimes when things are in third person, I need to be very clearly distinctive of whether it is first person singular or omniscient, and when it's omniscient, like whose mind are we in right now? And I very much need that. I just also feel like it can get pretty boring. I will read a classic every now and then, or I'll read an audiobook of a classic every now and then, but it takes me so long to get through. And if I am not looking for the slowest of slow burns, then I probably won't read older classics like Pride and Prejudice or Jane Eyre, which I've read. But it's just the slowest of slow burns. Because back then, I'm going on a tangent right now, but back then, in the 1800s, they had nothing to do. So when they wrote books and they read books, they were trying to make it last so long, because what are you gonna do throughout the day? All you can do is, like, if you're rich, I guess, because you probably have maids like cook and clean and shit, like, what are you gonna do? You can't do anything. They had to make books last a long time because that was one of the only forms of entertainment. If you're not going, I don't know, horseback riding or some shit, I don't know. They're like the slowest of slow burns. And I was kind of iffy about starting Where the Crawdads Sing in that way. But wow, I'm giving way too much backstory, but this was such a good find. Because let me tell you, I got this book, hardcover, almost new condition. I already read it, I already annotated it, etc. I found this at the thrift store, which probably, if you go on barnesandnoble.com, it's probably going to be, it's a hardcover, so maybe over $20. I got it for $4 at the thrift store. $4. And it's new condition. I was shook. I said, I have to buy this, and it was sitting on my shelf, and then I heard that the movie's coming out, and so I tried to read it 2 months ago. 2 months later, I had only read the first 80 pages, and it took me so long to get through the first 80. Here's my review. I'm starting my review. So I feel like overall, I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. And I will be having, before we get more into this video, I will be having spoilers at the very end, and I will kind of notify you as to when that will happen before I say the spoilers. But I thought the beginning was pretty slow, honestly. The book, and I said this in my Goodreads, the book doesn't really take off until her dad does. Like, until her dad leaves and abandons her, the book is really slow for me. And that happens around the 80-90 page mark. Like, once Kaya as a main character is by herself, that's when the book like really picks up, I compulsively read this book in a day after that. So after 2 months of only reading 80 pages, I read the rest of the book in one sitting. And I was so shocked that I did that. And so proud of myself, honestly. If you don't know what this book is about, you can kind of see by the cover, it follows a girl who lives alone in the marshes of, I believe it's like South Carolina, in the Carolinas. It's really hard to say the genre of this book, but it's a story of survival because she lives by herself by the time that she was around 10 years old in the middle of nowhere and has to learn how to survive. And she lives in the Marsh, which is this area of land/sea that connects the two. And she lives in this area. It's very wild, and it's about Kaya's growing up and being abandoned. It's about her lack of love and finding love. There's found family, there's romance in this, there's mystery, there's a lot of mystery aspects, and it also goes back and forth in time. So there's the beginning timeline, like the past timeline of Kaya growing up and going through her first love, and then her second, and you know, her survival things and stuff like that. And then there's the second timeline, which is the murder mystery timeline, where someone dies and they pin it on Kaya because she's kind of a social pariah when it comes to the civilization, like quote-unquote civilized community, where the townspeople are. They kind of see Kaya as like this like scary being, and like they've only heard things about this girl who lives in the marsh, and they think that she's some like wild beastly girl and she's like scary and shit like that, and they pin this like maybe murder on her. And the second timeline is that trial and like that mystery aspect. So I just want to start off by saying that this book was near perfect. I would probably give it 4.75 out of 5 then, because there was only one thing that I didn't like about it, which I will talk about later. But the writing was just beautiful. And I don't have to be a sucker for writing. When I read, like, if you have really shitty writing, but I can still get in line with the characters and the world building, and I can still use my imagination for things, that's fine. But this writing was just so beautiful. The way that they used the wildlife in the marsh as metaphors for Kaya and Kaya's feelings, and the way that Kaya feels about love and loss, where you really feel as a reader Kaya's connection with nature and the things around her. And she says this, that, oh, maybe she should leave the marsh, that she should try to like find somewhere else to go when she gets abandoned by her family. But she says, the wild things need me, that the marsh needs her, that the wildlife here and her, they're family. And I was like, why does that hit me so hard? Like, sentimentally, oh my god, I'm about to tear up. Like, what the fuck? Literally, what the fuck? You feel Kaya's loneliness and why she's so standoffish, why she's so bad at socializing with other people, and you really get her sense of loneliness. Another aspect I really liked about this book was how vivid it was with the setting. Like, you really, really understood the marsh and the setting, and the marsh itself and the nature itself of this book was a character. It played into a lot of aspects of the book. The murder mystery portion of this book very much goes into the character of the marsh and the character of wildlife, and how nature plays into the murder mystery. Is really cool. That's one of the best parts of this book, is the visual of the marsh. I just love the idea that Kaya is the marsh. That is the metaphor also within itself. Like, ooh, I was eating up these metaphors, because like the marsh is supposed to be this area where land and sea meet, and it is a necessary purpose for the ecosystem to work together. The marsh is like an area where, is it millions or thousands of ecosystems and forms of life are there, and it's needed, it's necessary, it's important, and it's that connection between the two, between land and sea, right? That's what the Marsh is. And Kaya is the connection between humans and humanity and the earth. She is that being that connects the two forces, and you really feel she is important because of that. And she is this figure to have humanity and nature understand each other as well, because she is so in tune with nature. She's a freaking novelist. She's insanely smart. She wrote books and is like so passionate about the wildlife and the creatures of the marsh. She has books about the birds, about the plants, about everything of the marsh. And she like published these books later throughout the novel in Where the Crawdads Sing. I just found that metaphor so, oh, it was so good. That metaphor, it just hit a spot in me that was so satisfying to like understand that and feel that within this book. The murder mystery aspects and going through the trial and seeing the way that people were talking to Kaya and the love part of this book. Every aspect of this book was so well done. You really got invested with every single aspect of this book. There was not one part where you didn't really feel invested as much. I cried for parts of it. It touches your heart in some way. And I don't want to spoil anything until the very end, right? Where I'll talk about the thing that I did dislike. Overall, they really got the reader invested in all aspects of the story, which I think is within itself a compliment to the writing. The thing that I didn't like about this book as well is that there was like a couple things about race. I guess it was like only one maybe thing about it where I was like, okay, like, I don't know about that. I understand what they were trying to do, but I don't know. I think maybe as a white woman, it's not really your place to like say that, because Kaya, when she's growing up, she gets help from this black family. And this, mind you, this is set, I think, in the 60s, early 70s. Kaya says something to the man who helps her, Jumpin. His name is Jumpin. He's a black man. She says, when the trial is going on, when they're accusing her of this murder, Kaya's talking about prejudice against her because she lives in the marsh. People have these ideas about her and like what she's like because she lives in the marsh. And she tells Jumpin, who is a black man, the prejudice against her as a young white woman is the same for her as it is for him because she lives in the marsh. And I was like, I don't know if you have the insight to say that as a white woman, but like, okay, I guess you live in the marsh, so your life and the prejudice against you is gonna be the same as a black man in the 60s. I guess, like, you know, I just felt like that part of the book and that aspect was kind of iffy to me, but I didn't take off a rating for that because it was only one or two parts that were like that. They didn't make it a huge part of the book at all for it to be a negative of it at all. But I just wanted to point that out because that was said in the book. The thing that I didn't like about this book and why I felt like I took that half star off, and this is where I'm going to get into spoilers right now. So I'm going to get into spoilers, is the ending. I felt like the characterization of all of the characters were good, but they weren't great. And I think that the very end of the book, the big reveal that Kaya actually did kill Chase Andrews, that she did do all of that, and it was a Gone Girl moment, right? Like you believe throughout the whole trial that it's almost impossible for Kaya to have done this because she has an alibi. She was out of town. She would have to take 1,000,000 buses here and back and like time crunch. There was no evidence to say that she did anything to Chase Andrews, that it was probably just nature that took him and he fell down the tower, you know? And then you read the very, very last page of the book and you find out after Kaya dies already that she did kill Chase Andrews all those years ago. That she did do it. And I feel like it was a great reveal, and I read that And I thought back throughout the book, like after reading that and closing it, I just kept thinking back on it like, ooh, this changes the way that I see this book. But I gave it a half star off because I feel like in general, I don't know why, if it was the characterization or what it was, it felt out of character to me for her to do that. I feel like they should have maybe, I know it might have killed the mystery aspect of the book, but you can also let me know in the comments if you disagree with me, if you've read this book and it is in character. But I wish there was more that was said about the way that Kaya, why she drove to murder, you know? Throughout the entire book, you don't ever see her as someone capable of killing because she is very much a loving person. She loves the wildlife in the marsh. She feels like all she wants in life is love. She spends her entire life waiting on people, waiting on tape, waiting on connection. Like that's her whole thing, is like she's always looking for connection with things. And yeah, Chase did that thing where he almost, you know, S-a'd her, R-worded her, and he did do that, and she said like, oh, I'm gonna kill you, etc., etc. She said that, but also in the heat of the moment, people say those things, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna kill you. For Kaya to be able to plan all of that, go through all of this work to like do that to Chase, it's like I wish we really saw the resentment in her for what Chase did throughout the entire book, because Chase wasn't really good to her throughout like her youth. But I wish we saw that resentment in her, because why would she drive to do all these things and plan a murder, like first degree, push him down the water tower, you know? Like it felt very out of character to me, because of like the entire characterization of the entire book for Kaya was that she was very loving and like was in search for connection. And even at that point in her life, that point when Chase's murder happened, Kaya was also in a good place. Before Chase tried to like get her or whatever, she was in a good place of getting back closer with Tate and publishing her books and finding a found family and living her life in the marsh and, you know, having a better life for herself. She was getting to that place right before the murder happened. So it's like, why did she want to potentially destroy all of that, kill someone and plan that? Like, I don't know. It just didn't make sense to me. And that's why I had to give it a half star off, because if we understood that aspect, I think this book would have probably been perfect. But please let me know if you disagree with me. And yeah, that's kind of my review for this book. I give it 4.75 out of 5, 4.5, 4.75 out of 5. Let me know your thoughts down below. And let me know if you're going to see the movie, because I am going to see it. I have AMC Premium, like Premiere. I need to use that. I'm going to see it hopefully opening weekend, because I'm so excited for it. It's coming out. Today is the 12th when I'm filming this. It's coming out in 3 days. I'm so excited. I think it's coming out the 15th, yeah. And I've seen some of the trailers and it looks good. I don't know if it looks great yet until I see it, but I think Daisy Edgar Jones is a great pick for Kaya. I love the guy who plays Tate. I'm like, oh my god, like, I don't know. It's good. It looks like good casting. I hope that you really see the Marsh as like its own character in this film, because film can really do that for a book. Visually, I want to see the Marsh and I want to feel all the feels in this movie, but only 2 hours can do so much, right? So yeah, let me know your thoughts down below and I will see you in the next one.